Let's talk about crafting and see if we can make it generic or not. Hello everyone, this is Ali Reza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. This will be a brainstorming video, and if you don't like brainstorming videos, you can pass it. However, in my opinion, brainstorming about developing your API is actually more important compared to when you are developing your API. Now, if you take a look at an example of a finished block entity in any mod that is handling crafting, we can identify the points that we want to make sure will not cause any problems for us. If we can find some things that will cause problem and we can't bypass it, then so be it. We will not make an API for it, and we need to cover it over and over for any type of block entity that we are dealing with. Now, any type of crafting block entity will have a progress and max progress. This is okay. We can have protected ints for them. But some block entities, in this case, this is alloy furnace block entity from 30 Vortex mod, we will see that he's adding burn time and max burn time. The reason is that he's not accepting energy in this single block, and he's trying to burn things like coal and work with that. Anyway, in case of any crafting recipe, we have a progress that will move forward until it hits max progress, and then the crafting result will be put in the output. This is the easy part. Then we have this registry key of a recipe of any type, and that is current recipe ID. Again, this is generic enough and we can handle that. If we take a look at our constructor here, we see that it is just accepting inventories and that is it. Then we have isFuel, getFuel. These are helper methods that is not dedicated to any crafting. Get inventory provider, screen opening data, display name, creating menu. None of that is related to crafting, not even get syncable. However, I wonder, where is his property delegate? It's here. If we open the property delegate, we see that we have progress and max progress. Okay, that's good. We have burn time, we have max burn time. This is good. But when we go into the tick method, because these are simple enough, we can assign values, we can get values, the number of the property delegates, that's okay. However, when we get here on the tick method, the first part is related to adding a stack when we have the output for the stack. Otherwise, if we want to burn something and we are burning, then it's putting the property to be lit. Here, I would be more okay if we were using progress, especially when we are using energy. And then the main thing begins. So if the current recipe equals null, means that we don't have any working recipe, then we want an optional of a recipe entry of the custom recipe type, and we call get current recipe. The rest is easy, because when you have this recipe entry, you see that at some point he can get the value, and from the value can get anything like a smelt time or anything else, and the output and anything else. So the biggest part of this whole thing is to get the current recipe, okay? And the crafting is, again, getting the output and putting it in the output slot. However, when he wants to get the recipe, he calls get current recipe method. Get current recipe method returns the optional recipe entry of the custom recipe type. So far, I'm completely okay with this, because we can introduce a generic that extends, I don't know, some recipe type. And if you take a look at this, it's a recipe of recipe simple inventory, and that's it. So for example, R extends recipe of recipe simple inventory, and then here you will use R as a generic. Problem is that when we want to get current recipe, we go here, server work, get recipe manager, get first match. So far so good. Getting the inventory is good, because it will return a recipe simple inventory. That's okay. And this .word is okay. This will be the biggest headache for us so far. It's a static registry thing about recipe type of our generic one, okay? Now, if we want to make this generic, we will accept that, I don't know, recipe type of our generic type, and we call it recipe. But each time we will call this get current recipe inside our tick method, and here it's 2 times, we need to send in the parameter. Okay, I can live with that. But we passed through a bigger problem, and we said, that's okay, we understand it, we just need some property delegates. If now we go into our own library, we see that we have inventory that doesn't have anything to do with the delegate. we have the fluid storage that will provide two things for the delegate. We have energy storage, and that's another two things for the delegate. So far, we have four delegates. Then we will have recipe on top of these, and that will become six delegates. Okay, I can live with that. I will not add the recipe thing inside G machine block, but I will make something like G crafting BE and then add crafting on top of the G machine. I can work with that, but the problem is that what if someone wants these? Something like this. I'm not sure if someone wants to add them or not. And this means that we will have more problem regarding our property delegate. So either we have to drop the idea of having a block entity that will handle the recipe things for us, or we need to adjust our property delegate each time and it shouldn't be final anymore. Or if it's final, then we can have a method that says get property delegate and work with that. However, there is a bigger problem because this is manageable. I mean, the worst case scenario, instead of saying new property delegate, we will have a method called here get property delegate, and people need to adjust that. But the biggest problem here is the tick method itself. I mean, think about my main mod, okay, Ultra IO, and somewhere I have a block entity that will need crafting. On the other hand, I will have a block entity that does not craft anything and just produces energy. Problem here is that when I go into my crafting machine, the logic will be custom, machine based. I mean, one machine will ask for one logic process and the other machine will have a different flow of logic behavior. Because of that, we don't know what part of logic we will have to work with recipes. I can put these inside a method. For example, this will become get current recipe thing or handle current recipe, and this will become handle crafting. That's it. This one is all about burn times and removing the stack to make burn times. Now here is the final crafting. You see, it's updating and getting the output slot. From output inventory, it gets the slot and then sets it to be output that is the result of the recipe.craft. Again, this can become a method. So if I want to handle recipes in my block entity, I need a method to handle the generation of property delegate. I want a method to assign a recipe ID. Then this one says if the recipe is empty or, and actually I'm not sure why he's doing it this way because honestly, oh, he's early returning here. Okay. Anyway, we will have this get current recipe. So one for property delegate, second method for this, third method is get recipe ID, and then fourth method is for crafting. And back in my main mod, I will put these pieces of puzzle into my tick and call these methods wherever I want and get done with that. However, you see that we have this output slot as a static number. So any method that wants crafting should get the output slot. Honestly, I think we have a better way of doing that. Instead of creating a dedicated block entity for handling the crafting, we can go back and start working on our tick logic library, because the aim with tick logic library is exactly that, having pieces of puzzle that are modular enough that will enclose the behavior inside themselves and encapsulate it. And you just call a single method in them and they will just return a success. The thing is that when we are working on tick logic, we should make sure that we have something that will be able to retrieve the recipe ID as a general, not as one piece of puzzle from that library somehow. And that is called a field in the blackboard, actually, if you're familiar with behavior trees. Anyways, the biggest question we should ask ourselves is that, do we want to have 4 different methods sitting inside a block entity and have a dedicated block entity for our crafting? Or do we want to go on the road for the tick logic and handle the behavior tree concept for our ticking of block entities? Because if we start the road for the tick logic, things will become modular enough so that we don't have to deal with multiple use cases and different use cases. The thing is that it will generate nodes, and each node can handle its own logic based on what it needs. And when we are generating the node, we are better suited to setting something like a generic for the custom recipe type. And honestly, so far we have 1, 2, 3 different generics here. And if I want to have another block entity, I have to add another generic at the end, like R, that is whatever we have here. Let me see. This will be a recipe entry of another generic that extends recipe. So I will have to have 2 more generics. And I don't like having many generics to just go with one machine. Although it's the recipe entry of anything, and this alloy furnace recipe, this is the recipe of the recipe simple inventory. So yeah, we will need one single generic to handle this actually. But then again, inside here, remember, this was a recipe of recipe simple inventory. When we go here, we have recipe type of that, okay? And I'm not sure. I prefer to work on tick logic instead of adding more to this guy. I mean, this is robust enough to be a machine. And if we want to have the crafting hard-coded inside the tick logic, then yes, we can work with old-fashioned way of opening a mod, taking a look at its code, copy-pasting things around, stuff like that. And another question, by the way, is that do I want to have that property delegate here or not? Because when we are working on our machine, for example, here, if I go into block entity, machine, and open gem cleaner BE, you see that I want to return the property delegate. So I think eventually I need at least one single method that will be protected, and it will return a property delegate, and we call it get property delegate. And actually we will leave it empty and return null. Okay, and on top, I will add, do I want it to be public? No. Protected, final property delegate, and here I will say property delegate equals to get property delegate. I will have another method here. This one needs to be public. That returns an integer that is property delegate size. For time being, it will return 0. Okay, I did implement these and not made them abstract because, as I said, some of my machines may not have. Actually, this is a machine that will have property delegates. So let's deal with that. This is a new property delegate get set, and here we will say property delegate size. Here we have fluid and energy, so that's 4. And I will actually try to copy paste from Industeria because that's a little bit faster. And that's this part, copy. And here I will paste. Oh, he's just doing the progress and max progress. He's not setting energy values here. We really don't need any property delegate here. So honestly, if we don't need it, then bye-bye to it. Why bother? Anyways, that's the thing about crafting. If I want to add crafting here, I have to add, I don't know, 4 or 5 methods and got another generic, but I prefer to have my tick logic library, and there I will add a node, for example, that will just check if we don't have crafting ID or recipe ID. And if we don't have a recipe ID, then it will do something else. And that is actually designing a behavior tree, basically. So I will not add crafting into this machine. I could bypass this video and not recording it. However, at the end of the previous video, I said that I will add crafting handling to this machine. And between the episodes, I sat back and thought, you know what, doesn't really make sense to do that. So I recorded this video to show you the thought process that I had behind the scene and made a decision that I shouldn't add it here. I think these thought process videos are exactly what is lacking in the community when it comes to video tutorials, and that is exactly why many people are struggling with making decisions and writing code. So that is why I recorded this short video. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun, everyone. Bye.